Good morning. Welcome to James Rumsey Technical Institute in Martinsburg, West Virginia. This is the electromechanical technology class. We are conducting distance learning, and we are doing hands-on learning via the YouTube and Facebook. I want to preface this live stream by saying, please do not try what we are doing here at home unless you have attended my extensive safety training in the electromechanical class here at James Rumsey. I want to welcome our students here today. We are working on our final exam requirements. We are putting together a board that will simulate the aquastat and primary control of a boiler, but we are using the Arduino microcontrollers and various sensors to achieve this. Okay. I see that I have a student that has clocked in there with us. I'm going to get started. And so, without any further ado, we are going to look at, now yesterday we completed our wiring, and so today we're going to start focusing on code, and we said that we were going to look at code as it relates to the logic, just the logic of the code, because we can quickly get ourselves buried in loops and in while statements and if statements, and that can get us in trouble if we haven't first defined our program logic. So we're going to take the portion of our program. In fact, we're going to work on the one that was the zone valves. We had wired up the zone valves, and those are the ones with the servo motors and the thermostat attached to them and so on, and the two little relays. In fact, let's go look at that in terms of picture or board wise. That is the one on the right where we have the two switches coming in and we have our 24 volts attached. That code is what we're going to be starting to work on today. You'll see I have my Arduino cord plugged in there to the Arduino. And so that's where I'd like to take off from today. So I'm going to launch Arduino software, and we're going to go take a look at that right now and see where we're at. Okay, so you'll notice that I've launched the Arduino, and I've called the file zone valves logic only. And you'll understand here, once we go through this code, what I'm doing here. This is going to be step one, and from there, once we have looked at our logic, then you'll see it become evident how easy it is to plug in the code for our servo motors and so on. So we're going to look at this, and I'm going to start off by saying, okay, we know that our thermostat 1 is on pin 12, okay? And this is a variable that I'm defining so that we can see which input is going to be our thermostat switch input, which we already have wired up. Okay, and then we got the thermostat 1 count. We know that was so that we can go read those inputs, the AC. So we're going to be looking at an input right now, and then we're going to determine, based on that input, what is the logic that we need to follow. So we have our on state 1. We have an action 1. Set an action when we need to act on an on state 1 status, which means if we get an on state, we need to know that we need to do something, so there's an action. And we set these flags so that we don't have to constantly do the action every time through the loop, only when it's required. Okay? And you'll notice there's our thermostat switch 2, on state for 2 and action for 2, and then we have a zone end switch. Those are our end switches that we're going to be looking at. And so the reason I put them in here right now is because, remember, they are active high or active low. And so if we don't turn them off right off the bat, then they're going to cause problem while we're doing our logic. And so in our void setup, you'll see here my pin mode. I'm setting my inputs for my thermostats coming in. And then my zone in switches are outputs driving those relays, okay? And then, of course, we immediately write out a high to those zone in switches so that they don't come on when we don't want them to come on. And then we set our baud rate, because we're going to be looking at serial print statements to tell us logically where we are, okay? So that's what we're going to be looking at here, and we're going to look at our void loop here to start off with. And okay, let me take a look at the void loop here. Let's go see what we got. The digital read, in fact, let me do this. I'm going to let me just change something here. I'm going to slide something off. Mr. Versa, I know you're there. I'm going to slide this over to another screen, the Arduino stuff, because I want to be able to get my mugshot in there. Okay. And let me see what's happening here. All right, let's see. Okay, so I just want to make it more visible on the screen for you. So if you just give me a moment there, I will, actually, I guess it's the best here. And let me see what's going on here. Just a second. There we go. All right. I'm just going to stick to what I was doing here. All right. There we go. So in the main void loop, of course, we know this code. This is what we wrote the other day in our test code. We go read the thermostat, and we go see if it's on or not. And you notice the print statements there. All right. I'm just putting in print statements on what we need to do. Thermostat for zone 1 is calling for heat. Okay. Then we go to serial print, and you notice I haven't done anything different yet from our test code. Okay. Right here is where we start putting in some logic. All right, I'm going to highlight that. If the on state is 1 and action equals high, which means we need to do an action, then we're going to go do it. And I'm just putting in serial prints right now. Open zone valve. So what we're going to do is, if our logic pans out, then we know where to go put our zone valve code and our end switch code. So you'll notice that here I said, look, if the on state is high, that means that we need to open the zone valve, so we're going to print that. We're not going to worry about the code for that right now. We're just going to print it. And then we're going to say, close the zone valve end switch, which means we want to turn that relay on, which will close the switch. And when we're done, we're going to say that action 1 is low. We've done the action. Don't repeat it until something changes. All right? Now, if on state 1 equals low and action equals high, now you notice, what are we going to do there? That is if the on state was turned off, which means if the thermostat turned off, it will set action high again because we need to do a new action. And here we serial print close zone valve on and open zone valve on end switch, action low. Now we're done. And you're going to see what that effect will be on our print statements. And then that's the end of zone 1, and then we just repeat the whole process again for the thermostat 2, all right, because we have 2 zones, all right. So it's the same code, identical code as for zone 1. I just copied it and changed everything to zone 2. So let's go see what in the world this is going to look like if we run that and we look at our serial monitor, okay. So what's going to happen is I'm going to start up a serial monitor here, and let me just compile first, and let's get the right port selected here. All right, that's COM6, and we are going to do a compile and upload, and then we're going to be looking at our serial monitor. And so let's see, an error occurred while uploading this sketch. Well, let's take a look. Let's try that again. Okay. Everything should be okay. My Arduino should be there. Uploading. All right. Done uploading. All right. It didn't like me playing with the serial monitor at the same time. Okay. So you notice my serial monitor doesn't have anything on it. Nothing is happening. And I'll let you see that here in a minute. Yeah, you can see it there in the corner, but I'm gonna put it on another screen here so that you guys can see this. And let's see. I'm going to put that. Let me go right here. Okay, this way you can actually see the board. And I'm going to go ahead and set that up so that you can see that. Let's go take a look. Notice there's nothing, even though the code is running, there's nothing happening on the screen. And that is because I only want to see when it actually occurs. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the little switches there on the bottom, and I'll go point them out for you now. In fact, let me see if we get a better shot at this. Sure. Let's go see. You can see that there. I'm going to go over here, and let's see what we got. Okay. Let's turn on one of the thermostats. There we go. The thermostat is on. Okay. And let's go see what our code is doing on the screen. You'll notice you just got one message. Thermostat for zone 1 is calling for heat. Now let's see if we can see that. Okay. So you guys can see up there in the top corner there, open the zone valve 1 and close the zone valve 1 end switch. Okay, so that's pretty slick there in that using that action variable, we can determine instead of just having this scrolling through the screen, it'll just do it once to tell us what we need to do, and that's where we're going to do the actual code once we get our logic tested. All right, so now we're going to look at the zone 2 and see whether it works. All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. All right, let me go ahead and turn that little zone on so that our input turns on, and there it is. And we should now have a message, if everything worked well, that said thermostat for zone 2 is calling for heat. Open zone valve 2, close zone valve 2, end switch. Okay, so that's where we need to close the end switch, which is our relay. Okay, now of course if we turn these off, all right, if we turn them off, if we turn these guys off, what really needs to happen here? Okay, what do you guys think? Let's see. I say we should see just the opposite of these, right? So I'm going to go ahead and turn the switches off. I'm going to turn zone 1 off first and then zone 2, and let's look at our print statements, okay? And so let's go see what happens. All right, I turned number 1 off, and sure enough, zone thermostat no longer calling for heat. Close zone valve 1, open zone valve 1 end switch. Let's turn off number 2. All right, did it happen? Yep. No longer calling for heat on zone 2. And looks like we've got ourselves a winner. Okay, so let's go back to the code now, and let's look at that and see what in the world we're doing, because remember, we're not really writing all the code here. We're just focusing on the logic, because it's very difficult to troubleshoot logic when we have all the other code around us. And so let's keep it simple by just looking at that setup there for just the logic. Okay, so we focus just on the logic, and we're going to go look at what that code looks like again. We already looked at it once, but now that you've seen the messages, now let's just go look at that code again, because what I want you guys to focus on today is getting your code to this point for your zone valve portion of this exercise, okay? And so let's go take a look at that and see what happens. Let's go look at that code. I'm going to put that back on here. Okay. And let me just take a look here. Here we go. Okay. So let's go take a look at this now. Now that we've seen it once, you notice that I said I defined my variables, and I copied this right from my test code, okay? This came from the test code, but then I just changed the variables a little for me to be a little more specific to my application. You'll notice the thermostat 1 on pin 12, okay? And remember, thermostat 2 was coming in on pin 11. All right. In fact, I'll see. I can highlight it there. Pin 11. Okay. And then thermostat 1 came in there on pin 12. And then all the counts and the start millis and all that on state, was coming right out of the test code, okay? The only thing that I added was this action 1. And this action 1 is what allows me to only put my messages out on the print screen when the event occurs. Otherwise, you're used to all that messages scrolling through and you can't see what's going on. And so this says only put it on the print screen once until something changes, and then put the change up, okay? And so we'll go see how we did that. All right, so let's go back down here. And then, of course, I just repeat everything for thermostat 2. You'll notice it's just a duplicate of it, okay? And you'll notice I haven't put anything in here for these the actual servo motors, because I just want to go find where to put it. And that's what we're doing today. We're defining our logic, okay? And then, of course, we do our setup. I went over this at the beginning, but we're just going to do it again. Pin mode, we define our pin modes, our inputs, our outputs. We write out a height, so we make sure we turn off those end switches so they don't send information out to the rest of our circuit. And then we begin our loop. And just like in our test code, remember we're reading AC now, we're looking for pulses. If we get a pulse, we say thermostat for zone 1 is calling for heat. We set on state to high for on state for 1, which means 1 is calling for heat. And we say action 1 is high, because we don't want to print anything unless action 1 is high, all right? Otherwise, we can't see what the heck we're doing. So now we say, let's go see here what happens. If the thermostat count is 0 and on state equals high, here's where we don't get any pulses, okay? And we print out zone thermostat no longer calling for heat, okay? And action 1 is high. Now take a look at this. How interesting. If on state 1 equals high, which means if it's on, and action is 1, we can open the zone valve here. And we only want to open the zone valve once. We don't want to sit there and cycle, keep trying to open it every time we come through our main loop. So the main loop will execute and open the zone valve only once until we tell it to close it again, okay? And so we open the zone valve. So what I'm going to do is this serial print will get replaced by my servo motor code, okay? But you see, I don't need to put that code here right now, because right now I'm just testing and making sure my logic is correct. Now that I know my logic is correct, my next step can be to go and replace this with my actual code, okay? Same with the switches. I'm not going to say digital write end switch 1 high or low here to turn it on. Too much information. Right now I'm just testing logic, okay? And then I set action to low. All right, it means I've done it. The next time through the main loop, it's not going to do it again. It's not going to keep trying to turn the relay on like we're used to doing. It's only going to turn it on once, and it's only going to turn it off when we ask it to, and it'll only do it once. So here we go. If on state equals low and action is high, remember up higher, let's go back up here. Let's go see where we set that. If it was low, notice here, if we didn't get a pulse, what did we say? On state. Okay, hang on, that's calling for heat. Let's go to where we're not calling for heat. That's where I'm too high to. There we go. If on state 1 is low, if we didn't get the pulse, action is 1, and we set on state to low. So here we're saying go do an action because we didn't get a pulse. And so now we can go, and now we will pass this condition. If on state is low and action is high, we're going to go close the zone valve, open the zone valve end switch, which is turning off the relay, and we set action 1 to low so it only does it once. Okay? And that's all there is to it. There's our entire logic for zone switch 1, and then of course we just and I put a note there, put a little comment, end of zone 1 code right here. Okay, you see that? And then I start with my second thermostat, and it is identical to number 1 except that I'm looking at input 1 and I'm doing everything for thermostat 2, including its servo motor and its end switch, and there it is. And so now I know my logic is correct and I can go add my other code. Okay? So again, this is available there for you. You'd be able to go see it out on the G drive under the final exam, Arduino code, and this is called the zone valve logic only. Logic only, okay? And so that's the piece that I want you guys to go and focus on today. Wrestle with this piece, because what's going to happen tomorrow, I'm going to be looking at the aquastat logic. Now that one's a little more convoluted and a little more complicated, just getting the logic. And so I didn't want to overload you today with both of them. I want you to do this one, get a handle on it, go see what I did, make sure you understand it, and then go see what I do tomorrow in the aquastat. Now, if you've already done it, no problem. If you already got your circuit running, great. I'm just saying this is a mechanism to step by step analyze your logic without overloading your code with all the code for everything else in your circuit. Okay? Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up there in the comments if that makes sense. All right? And so we're just checking things out here to see what what's actually happening. And so hopefully this was a useful little piece of code to show you how to use print statements to just analyze your logic first. Okay? If everything is good, give me a thumbs up, and I will call it a day today, because I want to give you time to go analyze this and see whether you can do this with your own code, because I know you guys have written your own code already, and so you can now apply some of these strategies to clean up some things in your code. All right? I see I got a thumbs up there from Mr. Givens. And how about Mr. Versa? Can I get a thumbs up from Mr. Versa? Is this gonna help you out today as you start developing that code? Let me see what you got. All right. If I don't hear anything there from Mr. Versa, I'm going to assume everything is cool, and we're going to call it a day. And then tomorrow is going to be a full day working on the aquastat code logic. Okay, we're just going to focus on the logic. And guys, so let me just tell you what that means. Logic means you're going to look at all your inputs, okay, all your inputs, but all your outputs are going to be essentially serial prints. So that we can make sure that it's happening correctly before we go put in all the code that is just going to clutter up our development in terms of making sure that our logic is correct. Okay, And Mr. Givens, also thank you for the video. I just saw it there. I haven't gone to look at your latest video. I was in staff meeting all morning on Zoom with the principal and all the other staff at James Rumsey. Okay, so thank you for the video. All right, guys, let's call it a day. And just text me or email me if you have any other questions. All right. I will conclude with our sign-on screen. Here we go.